Marcus Thompson woke up that Tuesday morning with the same empty feeling he had every day. He rolled out of his messy bed in his small apartment and looked at himself in the cracked mirror. At 28 years old, he had nothing to show for his life except a bad attitude and a motorcycle that was too loud for the quiet neighborhoods he loved to disturb. The sun was shining bright outside his window, but Marcus felt dark inside. He had no job to go to and no friends who actually cared about him. His family had stopped talking to him years ago after too many fights and too many problems. All he had left was his need to prove he was tough, and his worn-out leather jacket covered in patches that he thought made him look scary. Marcus grabbed his keys and headed outside to where his black motorcycle waited for him. The engine roared to life with a sound that echoed off the apartment buildings around him. He loved that sound because it made people look at him, and sometimes made them afraid. Fear was the only respect Marcus knew how to get from people. He rode through the busy streets of London looking for something to do. The city was full of people going about their normal lives with jobs and families and purposes. Marcus hated seeing happy people because it reminded him of everything he did not have. He wanted to make someone else feel as bad as he felt inside. As he rode his motorcycle through different neighborhoods, Marcus started heading toward the richer areas of the city. He always felt angry when he saw nice houses and expensive cars because he thought the people who owned them did not deserve their good lives. In his twisted mind, he believed that people with money needed to be taught lessons about how the real world worked. The neighborhood he entered was quiet and peaceful with tree-lined streets and well-kept gardens. People were walking their dogs and children were playing in small parks. Everything looked perfect and calm, which made Marcus even more angry than usual. He hated perfection because it made him feel like a failure. Marcus slowed his motorcycle down and started looking for an easy target. He wanted to cause some trouble that would make him feel powerful and in control. He had done this kind of thing before in other neighborhoods. Sometimes he would knock over trash cans or yell at old people or scare children who were playing outside. He noticed how clean and organized everything was in this area. The houses had fresh paint, and the lawns were cut perfectly. Even the sidewalks looked like they had been scrubbed clean. Marcus felt like he did not belong here, and that made him want to mess things up even more. As he rode slowly through the streets, Marcus was planning what kind of trouble he could cause. He wanted to do something that would make people upset but not get him in too much trouble with the police. He was always careful to pick on people who looked weak or scared because he was actually a coward deep down inside. The warm afternoon sun was beating down on his leather jacket, making him sweat, but Marcus did not care about being comfortable. He only cared about finding someone or something he could pick on to make himself feel better. He had no idea that this particular day would be different from all the others. Marcus had no way of knowing that in just a few minutes he would make the biggest mistake of his entire life. He thought he was just going to have some fun like always, but fate had other plans for him. The peaceful neighborhood he was riding through would soon become the place where his whole world would change forever. Marcus continued riding his motorcycle through the quiet streets when something caught his attention in a small park area between two fancy houses. Two beautiful dogs were playing together on the green grass under a large oak tree. They looked like English bulldogs with thick, muscular bodies and flat faces that made them look friendly and gentle. The dogs were completely focused on their game with a bright yellow tennis ball. One dog would grab the ball in its mouth and run a few steps before dropping it for the other dog to chase. They were wagging their tails and making happy panting sounds as they played together in the warm afternoon sun. Marcus stopped his motorcycle at the edge of the park and watched the dogs for a few minutes. He could tell right away that these were expensive animals that belonged to someone with a lot of money. Their coats were shiny and well-groomed, and they wore matching leather collars that looked brand new and costly. The sight of these pampered pets made Marcus feel angry and jealous. While he struggled to pay rent on his tiny apartment, these dogs probably lived better than most people. They had someone who loved them and took care of them and bought them nice things. Marcus had never experienced that kind of care and attention from anyone in his whole life. He got off his motorcycle and leaned against it while he studied the dogs more carefully. They were medium-sized with white and brown patches on their fur. Their faces had that typical bulldog look with wrinkled skin and big brown eyes that seemed kind and trusting. Neither dog showed any fear or aggression toward Marcus, even though he was a stranger. Marcus started walking closer to the dogs to get a better look at them. As he approached, they both looked up at him with curious expressions, but continued playing with their tennis ball. They seemed used to meeting new people and were not scared or nervous about a stranger coming near them. The friendliness of the dogs made Marcus even more angry because it reminded him of how different his life was from theirs. These animals had never been hurt or abandoned or left alone like he had been. They probably slept in comfortable beds and ate the best food and got attention whenever they wanted it. Marcus pulled out his phone and started looking at it while he got closer to the dogs. An evil idea was forming in his mind about what he could do to these innocent animals. He thought about how upset their rich owner would be if something happened to his precious pets. The idea of causing that kind of pain and anger made Marcus smile for the first time all day. The dogs kept playing and did not notice the change in Marcus' mood. They had no way of knowing that this strange man who was walking toward them had bad intentions. In their simple animal minds, they probably thought he might want to play with them or pet them like most humans did. Marcus was now close enough to reach out and touch the dogs if he wanted to. They were still focused on their game and completely unaware of any danger. The yellow tennis ball bounced between them as they continued their innocent fun under the shade of the oak tree. The peaceful scene in the park was about to be shattered by Marcus' cruel plan. The two happy dogs had no idea that their perfect afternoon was about to turn into a nightmare that would change everything for both them and the angry man who was planning to hurt them. Marcus took a deep breath and looked around the park to make sure nobody was watching him. The street was quiet and most of the houses had their curtains closed against the afternoon sun. He thought he was completely alone with the two innocent dogs who were still playing happily with their yellow tennis ball. Without any warning, Marcus lifted his heavy boot and kicked the first dog hard in its side. The poor animal let out a loud yelp of pain and surprise as it was thrown sideways across the grass. The dog rolled over twice before coming to a stop near a small bush where it lay whimpering and trying to understand what had just happened to it. The second dog immediately stopped playing and ran toward its injured friend. It started making worried whining sounds and tried to lick the hurt dog to make it feel better. Marcus watched this display of loyalty and friendship with a cold smile on his face. The caring behavior between the animals only made him want to hurt them more. Marcus kicked the second dog even harder than the first one. This time he aimed for the animal's stomach, and the force of his boot lifted the dog completely off the ground. The dog crashed down on a hard dirt path that ran through the park and started crying in a high-pitched voice that sounded almost human. Both dogs were now injured and scared, but Marcus was not finished with them yet. He pulled out his phone and started recording a video because he wanted to remember this moment forever. In his twisted mind, he thought this would be something funny to show other people later. He had no understanding of how sick and wrong his actions really were. Marcus laughed out loud as he filmed the two dogs who were now huddled together trying to comfort each other. He walked around them in a circle getting different angles for his video while making cruel comments about how pathetic they looked. The dogs were shaking with fear and pain, but they stayed close together for protection. The injured animals tried to crawl away from Marcus, but they were both hurt too badly to move very fast. Marcus followed them and kicked them again whenever they tried to escape. He was enjoying the power he felt over these helpless creatures who could not fight back or call for help. Marcus decided to kick each dog one more time to make his video even more dramatic. He wanted people who watched it to see how tough and fearless he was. The first dog was barely moving now and could only make soft crying sounds when Marcus' boot connected with its ribs again. The second dog tried to bite Marcus' leg when he came close, but it was too weak and hurt to do any real damage. Marcus just laughed at the feeble attempt to fight back and kicked the dog in the head hard enough to make it stop trying to defend itself. What Marcus did not notice while he was focused on tormenting the dogs was that several people in the nearby houses had heard the animals crying and were looking out their windows. Some of them had already called the police and others were taking pictures of Marcus with their own phones. Marcus was so caught up in his cruel game that he had no idea help was already on the way for the injured dogs. Marcus was still holding his phone and laughing at the video he had just made when he heard the sound of heavy footsteps on the sidewalk behind him. The steps were slow and steady, like someone who was not in a hurry, but had a very serious purpose. Marcus did not turn around right away because he was still enjoying watching the two injured dogs struggle on the ground. A deep, calm voice spoke from behind Marcus in a tone that was quiet but somehow very dangerous. The voice said simply, "You need to step away from my dogs right now." There was no anger or shouting in the voice, but something about the way the words were spoken made the hair on the back of Marcus' neck stand up. Marcus finally turned around expecting to see some weak old man that he could easily scare away or beat up if necessary. Instead, he found himself looking at a man who was about average height, but built like a professional fighter. The man was completely bald and had intense eyes that seemed to look right through Marcus, like he could see everything about him. The man was wearing simple clothes, just a plain black t-shirt and dark jeans, but Marcus could tell right away that this was someone who was used to physical confrontation. His arms and shoulders showed the kind of muscle that came from years of serious training, and his stance was balanced and ready, like he expected trouble. Marcus had no idea that he was looking at Jason Statham, one of the most famous action movie stars in the world. Marcus did not watch many movies and lived in his own small bubble where he only knew about motorcycle gangs and street fights. To him, this was just another guy who thought he could tell Marcus what to do. The injured dogs seemed to recognize their owner and tried to crawl toward him, making weak, happy sounds despite their pain. Jason looked down at his pets, and Marcus could see the man's jaw muscles tighten as he took in the extent of their injuries. When Jason looked back up at Marcus, his eyes had become cold and hard. Marcus was still holding his phone with the video he had recorded, and he waved it at Jason like it was some kind of weapon. He said, "Look what I did to your stupid dogs, and I got it all on camera too. Maybe next time you will keep them locked up where they belong instead of letting them run around here." Jason did not respond to Marcus' taunts or threats. Instead, he knelt down carefully next to his injured dogs and gently examined them to see how badly they were hurt. His movements were tender and caring as he checked each animal for broken bones or serious wounds. The dogs seemed to feel safer now that their owner was there with them. While Jason was focused on his pets, Marcus made the mistake of thinking the man was weak or scared. Marcus had always been able to intimidate people by being loud and aggressive, and he could not understand why this approach was not working now. The calm way Jason was acting made Marcus feel confused and even more angry than before. Marcus stepped closer to Jason and started pushing him on the shoulder, trying to get a reaction. He said, "What are you going to do about it, old man? Are you going to cry about your little pets? Maybe I should kick them some more while you watch and see how tough you really are." Jason slowly stood up from where he had been kneeling next to his dogs. When he reached his full height, Marcus suddenly realized that this man was not as small as he had first thought. Jason looked directly into Marcus' eyes, and Marcus felt something he had never experienced before in a confrontation. For the first time in his life, Marcus was genuinely afraid. Marcus tried to push down the fear that was starting to grow in his chest and forced himself to act even more aggressive than usual. He puffed out his chest and got right in Jason's face, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate the older man. Marcus was about 3 inches taller than Jason, and he thought this would make him look more threatening and powerful. "You think you scare me, Baldy," Marcus said with a sneer on his face. "I have been in more fights than you have had hot dinners, and I always win. Your fancy neighborhood does not protect you from guys like me who know how the real world works. Maybe I should teach you a lesson about what happens when you mess with the wrong person." Jason remained perfectly calm and did not back away, even though Marcus was practically spitting in his face. The action star just stood there with his hands at his sides, looking completely relaxed, like he was having a casual conversation with a friend. This calm behavior only made Marcus more frustrated because he was used to people either running away or fighting back when he threatened them. Marcus grabbed Jason by the front of his shirt and tried to shake him, but it was like trying to move a concrete statue. Jason did not budge at all, and his expression did not change even when Marcus was yanking on his clothes. It was clear that Jason had dealt with much more dangerous people than Marcus and was not impressed by this amateur attempt at intimidation. The complete lack of reaction from Jason made Marcus lose control of his temper completely. He started yelling and swearing while he pushed Jason harder and harder, trying to get some kind of response. Marcus was so angry that spit was flying from his mouth, and his face was turning red from the effort of trying to move Jason from his spot. Jason used this opportunity to check on his dogs again without taking his eyes off Marcus. He could see that both animals were breathing normally and did not seem to have any life-threatening injuries. This knowledge allowed him to focus completely on dealing with the dangerous man who had hurt his beloved pets. Marcus pulled out his phone again and started waving it around while he continued his threats. He said, "I am going to post this video everywhere and show everyone what happens to rich people who think they are better than everyone else. Your dogs got exactly what they deserved, and now you are going to get the same treatment." The mention of posting the video online seemed to get Jason's attention for the first time. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the phone in Marcus' hand. Jason knew that having a video of animal abuse spreading on the internet would be terrible for his dogs and might inspire other sick people to hurt innocent animals. Jason spoke for the second time since arriving at the park, and his voice was even quieter than before. He said, "Give me the phone and delete that video right now. This is your only chance to do the right thing before this situation gets much worse for you. You have already made one very bad decision today, and you do not want to make another one." Marcus laughed at what he thought was a pathetic attempt to negotiate with him. He said, "You are not getting this phone, and you are not telling me what to do. I am going to make you famous on the internet as the guy who could not protect his own dogs from a real man. Everyone will see how weak and helpless you really are." Jason sighed quietly, and Marcus could see him making some kind of mental calculation. It was like watching a computer process information before making a decision. Marcus had no idea that he was looking at someone who had spent years training for action movies and knew exactly how to handle violent situations. Marcus decided to try pushing Jason one more time to prove that he was in control of the situation. He reached out with both hands to shove Jason backward, but what happened next was so fast that Marcus' brain could barely process it. 1 second he was standing upright feeling confident and powerful, and the next second he was face down on the ground with his arm twisted behind his back, in a position that sent shooting pain through his entire shoulder. Jason had moved like lightning, grabbing Marcus' wrist and spinning him around before applying some kind of professional hold that left Marcus completely helpless. The action star knee was pressed firmly into Marcus' back, keeping him pinned to the grass, while his twisted arm felt like it might break if he tried to move even slightly. The pain was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced before. It was not just the physical agony of having his arm bent in an unnatural position, but also the crushing realization that he was completely powerless against this man. Marcus had always been the one in control during fights and had never been on the receiving end of this kind of expert technique. Marcus tried to struggle and break free, but every movement he made only increased the pain in his arm and shoulder. Jason was applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without actually breaking any bones, but Marcus could tell that the man could easily increase the force if he wanted to cause serious damage. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus found himself begging for mercy. He said, "Please let me go. I am sorry. I did not mean to hurt your dogs. I was just having some fun. I promise I will never do anything like this again." The words came out in a rush as Marcus tried to convince Jason to release him from the painful hold. Jason's voice was still calm and controlled as he spoke to Marcus from above. He said, "You hurt 2 innocent animals for your own entertainment, and you recorded it to share with other people. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of person you are. You are not sorry that you did it, you are only sorry that you got caught." Marcus' phone had fallen from his hand when Jason grabbed him, and it was now lying on the grass just a few inches away. Jason reached over and picked up the phone, while still keeping Marcus pinned down with his knee. Marcus watched helplessly as Jason looked at the video that showed him kicking the dogs. The expression on Jason's face became even more serious as he watched the footage of Marcus' cruelty. Marcus could feel the action star body tense with controlled anger as he saw exactly what had been done to his beloved pets. Jason deleted the video immediately and then put the phone in his own pocket so Marcus could not get it back. Marcus realized that his plan to humiliate Jason and post the video online had completely backfired. Not only was the video gone, but he was now the one who was helpless and humiliated. The neighbors who had been watching from their windows had probably seen him get taken down by a man who was older and smaller than him. Jason applied a little more pressure to Marcus' arm, causing him to cry out in pain. The action star said, "I want you to understand something very important. Those dogs you hurt are rescue animals that I saved from people just like you. They had already been abused before I gave them a safe home, and you brought that trauma back into their lives for no reason except your own sick pleasure." Marcus felt a new kind of fear as he realized that Jason was not just angry about the attack on his dogs, but was also disgusted by Marcus as a human being. This was not just about a fight between two men anymore. It was about justice for innocent creatures who could not defend themselves against cruel people like Marcus. While keeping Marcus firmly pinned to the ground, Jason began to explain exactly who he was and why Marcus had made the worst mistake of his entire life. He said, "My name is Jason Statham, and I am an actor who specializes in action movies. I have spent the last 20 years learning how to fight from the best stunt coordinators and martial arts experts in the world." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice water as the name registered in his brain. Even though he did not watch many movies, he had heard of Jason Statham and knew that he was famous for playing tough guys who could beat up anyone. Marcus had just attacked the pets of one of Hollywood's most famous action stars, and now he was experiencing firsthand what those movie skills felt like in real life. Jason continued speaking in his calm, controlled voice while Marcus lay helpless beneath him. He said, "Those two dogs you decided to torture are named Bruno and Stella, and they are the most important things in my life. I rescued them from a fighting ring where they had been abused and neglected for years before I found them." The knowledge that the dogs were rescue animals made Marcus feel even worse about what he had done. He had not just hurt some pampered pets, but had traumatized animals that had already suffered at the hands of cruel humans. Marcus realized that his actions had probably brought back terrible memories for Bruno and Stella of their previous abuse. Jason told Marcus about how long it had taken for the dogs to trust humans again after their rescue. He explained how Bruno had been so scared of people that he would hide under furniture for hours, and how Stella had been so thin that her ribs showed through her fur. It had taken months of patient care and love to help them become the happy, confident dogs that Marcus had attacked. In the distance, Marcus could hear the sound of police sirens getting closer to the park. The neighbors who had witnessed the attack on the dogs and seen the confrontation between Marcus and Jason had called for help. Marcus knew that when the police arrived he would be arrested and that his own video would be used as evidence against him in court. Jason said, "The police will be here soon, and you are going to be charged with animal cruelty, which is a serious crime in this country. You will also be charged with assault because you put your hands on me when I tried to stop you from hurting my dogs. Your own video recording will make it very easy for the prosecutor to prove that you are guilty." Marcus tried one more time to apologize and beg for mercy, but his words sounded hollow and desperate even to his own ears. He said, "Please do not press charges against me. I have learned my lesson, and I promise I will never hurt another animal again. I was just having a bad day, and I made a stupid mistake." Jason's response was immediate and firm. He said this was not a mistake. It was a deliberate choice to cause pain to innocent creatures who could not defend themselves. The only reason you are sorry now is because you got caught and are facing consequences for your actions. If I had not come back when I did, you would have continued hurting Bruno and Stella until you got bored. The sound of the police sirens was getting much louder now, and Marcus could see the flashing lights reflecting off the windows of the nearby houses. He knew that in just a few minutes his life would change forever as he was arrested and charged with crimes that would follow him for the rest of his life. Jason said, "I am going to make sure you face the maximum penalty for what you did today. Animal cruelty is not just a crime against my dogs. It is a crime against all innocent creatures who depend on humans for protection and care." Two police cars pulled up to the park with their sirens wailing and lights flashing. 4 officers got out of the vehicles and immediately recognized Jason Statham, kneeling on the ground with Marcus pinned underneath him. The lead officer approached cautiously and asked Jason to explain what had happened while the other officers secured the scene. Jason released his hold on Marcus and stood up while explaining the situation to the police. He showed them the injured dogs and told them about the video that Marcus had recorded of himself committing the animal abuse. The officers listened carefully to Jason's account and then turned their attention to Marcus, who was still lying on the ground holding his sore arm. When the police officers helped Marcus to his feet, he looked around desperately, hoping that someone would believe his side of the story. But the evidence against him was overwhelming, and several neighbors had already come forward as witnesses who had seen him kicking the dogs. Marcus realized that there was no way to talk his way out of this situation. The officers handcuffed Marcus and read him his rights while Jason handed over Marcus' phone, which contained the deleted video. The police technical team would be able to recover the footage from the device memory, even though Jason had erased it from the main screen. Marcus' own recording would become the key piece of evidence that would convict him. Jason called his personal veterinarian to come and examine Bruno and Stella at the scene. The vet arrived within 20 minutes and carefully checked both dogs for injuries. Fortunately, neither animal had any broken bones, but they both had bruises and would need pain medication and rest to recover fully from their ordeal. While Marcus was being processed by the police officers, more neighbors came forward to give statements about what they had witnessed. Several people had taken pictures and videos of the incident from their windows, and these would also be used as evidence in court. Marcus realized that the entire neighborhood had turned against him. The story began spreading on social media within hours of Marcus' arrest. Someone had posted a photo of him being put into the police car, with the caption, "Local man arrested for attacking Jason Statham dogs." The post went viral immediately, and Marcus found himself famous around the world for all the wrong reasons. Jason gave a statement to the press, explaining what had happened and asking people to respect his privacy while his dogs recovered from their injuries. He also announced that he would be donating money to animal rescue organizations in Bruno and Stella names to help other abused animals get the care they needed. Marcus was taken to the police station, where he was booked on charges of animal cruelty and assault. The bail was set at a very high amount because the judge considered him a danger to animals and possibly to other people as well. Marcus' family was contacted, but they refused to help him get out of jail because they were ashamed of what he had done. The local news stations picked up the story, and it became the top headline for several days. Marcus' mugshot was shown on television and in newspapers across the country. People were outraged by what he had done, and many called for him to receive the maximum penalty allowed by law for his crimes. Jason hired the best lawyers available to make sure that Marcus would face serious consequences for his actions. The actor was determined to use his fame and resources to send a message that animal abuse would not be tolerated. He wanted Marcus' case to serve as an example to other people who might consider hurting innocent animals. In his jail cell, Marcus finally began to understand the full extent of what his cruel actions had cost him. He had lost his freedom, his reputation, and any chance of living a normal life. 6 months later, Marcus sat in his prison cell wearing an orange jumpsuit and thinking about how different his life had become since that terrible day in the park. The trial had been swift and decisive, with the jury taking less than 2 hours to find him guilty on all charges. The judge had sentenced him to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of probation and community service at animal shelters. The story of Marcus' attack on Jason Statham dogs had become one of the most famous cases of animal cruelty in recent history. Videos and articles about the incident had been shared millions of times on social media, making Marcus one of the most hated people on the internet. His face had become a symbol of everything that was wrong with people who hurt innocent animals. Marcus had lost everything that mattered to him during the legal process. His landlord had evicted him from his apartment after seeing the news coverage, and his motorcycle had been repossessed when he could not make the payments from jail. The few friends he had before the incident wanted nothing to do with him now that he was famous for being an animal abuser. His family had completely cut off contact with him after the story went viral. His mother had called him once to say that she was ashamed to be related to him and that she never wanted to see him again. His brother had changed his phone number and moved to a different city to avoid being associated with Marcus' crimes. Meanwhile, Jason Statham had used the incident to raise awareness about animal abuse and had donated over $100,000 to animal rescue organizations around the world. Bruno and Stella had made a complete recovery from their injuries and had become even more famous than their owner as symbols of resilience and the importance of protecting innocent animals. Jason had also worked with lawmakers to strengthen animal cruelty laws and increase the penalties for people who hurt pets and other animals. The legislation that came out of Marcus' case was being called Bruno and Stella Law, and it would help protect countless animals in the future from people like Marcus. In prison, Marcus was forced to attend counseling sessions where he had to examine his behavior and try to understand why he had chosen to hurt innocent animals. For the first time in his life, he was required to think about how his actions affected others and to take responsibility for the pain he had caused. The other prisoners did not treat Marcus well when they learned why he was in jail. Even hardened criminals looked down on people who hurt animals, and Marcus found himself isolated and friendless even among other inmates. He spent most of his time alone in his cell reading books and trying to understand what had gone wrong with his life. As the months passed, Marcus began to realize that his need to hurt others had come from his own pain and feelings of worthlessness. He had never learned how to deal with his problems in a healthy way and had taken out his anger on innocent creatures who could not fight back. The counseling sessions were helping him understand that real strength came from protecting the weak, not from hurting them. When Marcus was finally released from prison, he found that the world had moved on, but had not forgotten what he had done. He struggled to find work because employers would search his name online and see the stories about his crimes. He had to live in a halfway house and report to a probation officer every week while doing community service at animal shelters. The community service turned out to be the most important part of Marcus' rehabilitation. Working with abandoned and abused animals every day helped him understand the impact of cruelty and the importance of compassion. He slowly began to develop empathy for creatures that could not speak for themselves and started to feel genuine remorse for what he had done to Bruno and Stella. Marcus knew that he would never be able to completely escape from his past, but he was determined to spend the rest of his life making up for his terrible mistake.